Hey everyone, welcome back to Hero and the Kid. This is episode 17 of the Sunday Sit Down. And before we get into it, I just want to let you guys know we're at the beginning of a big thunderstorm, so there might be some internet problems, but we hope not, and I'm really excited for this interview. Today we have one of the most popular artists in Marvel on the show. I've put in 2 weeks of really hard work for this show, and I'm really excited for this. For this interview. My guest tonight has worked on Wizard of Oz, I Hate Fairyland. He is a writer for Middlewest, Strange Academy, and Bully Wars. He has also done so many variant covers, and Skottie is truly an amazing person, and I'm really excited to sit down with the one and the only Skottie Young. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and if you like the video, like the damn video, and turn on Hero and the Kid's notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming content. Now, right now, I wish I was at a Comic-Con on stage introducing Skottie Young so I can hear all of you screaming. So without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour, Skottie Young.
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good. I'm really excited for this. Thanks for doing this. Really means a lot.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. How you doing with you guys still quarantining out there?
Yeah, right now. We're able to go to comic book shops. Before this interview, I was like looking around for some of your older work just to refresh my mind and pick up some Wizard of Oz to just go over that. But before we get into the interview, I'm just going to take a look at who we have in the chat. So we have 90 MF Comics, and we have my mom, we have Bruce Latter, we have Rich Ives, Nelson Hennessy, Herminio Reyes Jr., and James Watson in Space Captain Comics. So my very first question is, if this whole comic thing doesn't work out for you, are you going to buy a plaid shirt with a butterfly collar and chase your dreams of being the next DJ Jazzy Jeff?
Oh my gosh, that was so my dream. When I was a little younger than you are, you're 14, right?
Yep.
When I was a little younger than you were, I used to get any kind of music or hip hop magazine I could from the grocery store. And in the back, you could actually order the DJ Jazzy Jeff turntable setup.
Cool.
And I wanted that so bad. I never got it, but that was like my dream. And I would just sit around and listen. I actually took cardboard boxes. I've told this story a couple times, but not enough to where people have probably heard it. I used to take cardboard boxes, draw on top of them to make them look like DJ turntables, and I'd stick a pencil up through the box so I could put a record on it and then pretend that I had two turntables. So yes, if comic books don't work out for me, I'm totally going to get that butterfly collar and get my turntables back.
Well, that's awesome to hear. And I know that you're friends with Ryan Stegman, and when I interviewed him a couple weeks ago, he said he wanted to work on Daredevil sometime. And I know Chip Zdarsky has another year on that. Will you guys team up and take over Daredevil? Just saying, it would be cool. And speaking of Chip, how many times has he said he has 3 Eisners?
Oh, well, I don't know how many times Chip has says he has 3 Eisners. I don't pay attention because I have 4, so 3 doesn't really faze me. Chip needs to work a little harder. Man, Daredevil would be cool. I would love to. I'd love to write Daredevil. I would write some really cool Daredevil for Stegman. I think that'd be fun.
Nice. So now we're moving into your younger years and your outside life. I know that you moved out as a junior in high school and you got to where you are today. First, does your manager need a new client? And I think after this, I'm going to start looking for apartments. But all joking side. What was that like for you, and how did you get by?
Well, I worked. I've been working like actual jobs since I was, again, before your age. I had a paper route when I was a kid in elementary school, and I had that up through junior high. I played basketball, and then when I moved to Tennessee, when I was a sophomore. I think I was still 14 or 15. I got a job at Big Lots. Do you guys know what Big Lots is? It's like store it's like when Kmart and Walmart and all that stuff couldn't sell everything, they would like sell their leftover product to Big Lots, and we sold it for really cheap. Big Lots came to my art teacher in high school and asked if any kids wanted a job drawing signs. So I got an office back in the stock room of Big Lots, where I would just listen to hip hop all day, and I would draw Big Lots Man, which is like this little superhero character, on for sale signs. So if there was like a sale on Clorox, then I'd be like, Closeout Man, and he'd be whatever, and because Big Lots had such high turnover of product, and they could never tell what kind of product they had, all their signs were hand done. So I actually drew signs for 13 stores.
Wow.
So sometimes I'd go in and I'd draw the same sign 13 times. So I just sat back there. So I did that, and then after a couple of years, I started doing the signs and just kind of working in the store, kind of putting the store together. And I lived in Tennessee, and back in the 90s in Tennessee, the cost of living was much lower. I didn't realize that as a kid because I still was like, not making a ton of money. But I got by just going to school. I didn't have a car at the time, and when I did, my car broke down a lot, so I skateboarded back and forth from school to work in my apartment, and I got an apartment that was really right between my school and work. So that's how I got by. I got by just working my butt off every day, and it taught me a lot about responsibility for sure.
Now, I know that you're a huge music fan. Can you let people know the story about where you would let people rent your cassette tapes? Because I'm pretty sure they haven't heard that before.
Yeah. So this is going to be a repeating theme that you're going to learn about me throughout my life. Is I'm a hustler. Casey, my wife, got me a little sign for my desk, and instead of it saying my name, it just says every day I'm hustling. Because when I was in about third or fourth grade. Third, fourth, fifth grade, I just loved music so much, and I bought any kind of my paper route money. I would buy cassette tapes, and that at Christmas time I'd ask for cassette tapes. My birthday I'd ask for cassette tapes. So I had a pretty good music collection as a young kid, and this is also in the 80s, like the mid to late 80s, where VHS tapes and VCRs kind of were a new thing. So we started having video rental stores, right? I lived in a really, really small town called Fairbury, Illinois. And in this town, we had a video store called Small Town Video. I kid you not. It was called Small Town Video. And you just go up there and you rent your videos, right? And it was like, this is before Blockbuster. This is before all that. And so I was like, man, that's a really cool idea. So I took I took a tape case, filled all my tapes. I'd bring them to school with me every day, and I wrote a list of all my whole catalog, and I would tape it to the side of my desk. Back then, we had these big tin gray desks with a wood top, and you shove everything in. So on the side, we'd always decorate it and stuff. So on my side, I put my catalog. So if you were sitting anywhere near me, you could look over at my desk and be like, "Oh man, he's got that new Digital Underground," or "Oh my gosh, I want to listen to that Guns N' Roses," or whatever. And I would rent people my tapes so they could give me, if they gave me $1, they got my tape. They would get that tape for a week, and then have to bring it back. The business went okay for a while, but then really what happens is they would just pay me $1, take it home, and then they would dub it, right? Because everybody had dual tape decks back then. So they would just take it home, dub it, and bring it back. Then nobody rented my tapes after a while. It was a decent business for a couple of years.
I really love that story. I think it's really cool how you were motivated at such a young age to do something awesome like that. But my next question has multiple parts to it.
Okay.
And I heard you say that you had a paper route and you had to wake up at 4:30 every morning. My dad also had a paper route, and as a kid, and he used to save up all the money to buy skateboards. And you said that you used to skateboard back then. How good were you back then? And what are some skateboarders that you really liked?
Well, when I was doing my paper route, I was still pretty young, so I wasn't quite into skateboarding yet. I used most of my paper route money to buy Mad magazines and Archie comics up at the local grocery store Dave's in my small town. I actually got into skateboarding. I played basketball my whole life. I was from a very, very much of a basketball town. And when I moved to Tennessee, weirdly enough, I moved to a much bigger city. So I started to meet a lot much wider range of people, and that's kind of when I started to fall into kind of the music scene and the skateboarding scene. And so we would sit around. So it was like mid high school when I got into skateboarding. We watched all the 411 videos. Your dad might remember 411. It was like basically like a video magazine. And Little Stevie was one that I really liked. Lance Mountain ran obviously Tony Hawk. I had Tony Hawk wheels. I had Grind King trucks. I love them. They were so light. So there was I liked any of I was obviously a big hip hop fan. So any of the kind of skaters at that time that kind of skated to any kind of hip hop song. And I remember Little Stevie used to ride to some Wu-Tang songs. I know it was a Lords of the Underground. There was a Lords of the Underground track on one of the 411s. So I kind of like everybody of that era. I still I'm a little mix of that, right? There was the Lance Mountains and the Steve Caballeros and the Tony Hawks, but then we were kind of moving into that new zone as well. So, the Tony Hawk skateboarding games like came out later when I was a little older, but they still kind of focused on everybody that we really loved.
And isn't this around the time when you found your love for comic strips?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I definitely, when I was younger and delivering the papers, I had access to the funny, the comics. And that's when that Sunday Comics was so, the pages were big and you had all that. So I definitely fell in love with Calvin and Hobbes and Peanuts. And, I feel like our generation, we were definitely the Peanuts, Charlie Brown generation. We grew up watching all the holiday specials, Thanksgiving and Halloween and Christmas Charlie Brown specials. And so that definitely was something that I fell in love with. And, but I think more than anything, I fell in love with Mad Magazine when I found that on the stands for sure.
Now, is this around the time when you started drawing, and how did your family and friends react to when you showed talent in art?
That's always such an interesting question because I don't have a recollection of me not drawing. It's just always been something that I've done. I would set my toys up in front of me. I'd set my Optimus Prime toy in front of me and I'd try to draw it. My Lion-O from Wildcats, I'd try to draw it. And then really like when I started getting like Mad Magazine and stuff like that, I actually used that more as a thing to try to draw than I did to read. Like I remember when Roger Rabbit came out, they had the Roger Rabbit parody in there, and I would just try to copy that cover exactly, So I've always drawn, and in the same way that I've always drawn, I don't know that I've ever recognized or noticed that anybody recognized that I was good or not. I just think it was just something that I did, and it was something that everybody realized I did. In the same way, like, my two boys, they know that I draw, but they've always known that I draw. So I don't know that I don't know right now at their ages that they recognize it as something other than just like, oh, that's what dad does,
I know that you've always loved art and drawing. When you did graffiti, did you ever do it on buildings, and did you ever get in real big trouble?
I never got in trouble. I did it on a few buildings. I was not very good. The places that I was able to do it the most was we had, we'd build our own skate ramps, and one of my friends' dad owned a car dealership. And at one point the car dealership moved to a new location. So, but he still owned the land and all the buildings on the old location. So he gave us one of the body shops that was now completely empty as long as we cleaned it out.
Yep.
So we actually cleaned out one of the body shops and built ramps in there. And when we were in high school, and this is like right there at the end of high school and little like get ready to graduate, like junior, senior year, we built ramps in there. And so we spray painted everything in there, and we do some graffiti in there, and that was really cool. That was really fun. We called it Shutdown, right? Because it's a shutdown. It was called a shutdown. It was a shutdown car dealership, so we called it Shutdown. And on the weekends, sometimes we would we'd pool our money together and rent generators, and we'd have bands come out and play while we skated. Just showed off and like try to impress girls and stuff.
It had to be so cool getting your big break from CB Sabowski. He left you his business card for you, and did life instantly change for you? And how did your family react to that?
It didn't instantly change. I mean, in hindsight, that was definitely one of the turning points. But CB and I were, we were both kind of young ones back then, like trying to find each of our way. I didn't realize of him at the time. Because I was so hungry to break into the business. I mean, I was at the time, I think I was 21 or 22 when I met him. And he was just a few years older than me, also trying to figure out, so we're both in our 20s. We're both trying to figure out like what we're going to do in this comic book business. But I didn't know anything about the business. So I just realized like somebody left a card and they said they were from Image. So, when you're in my mind, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's it. Everything's gonna work out now. But really, mostly it was just he and I becoming friends over those next couple of years and pitching books together and seeing what happened. And then he was at the right place, right time, and suggested me for a book. I ended up getting that book, Iceman. And then when I was working on Iceman, he got a job as an editor. And so over the next 6 months, we figured out something, and he put me on a Spider-Man book. And then we've kind of just come along this, for the last 20 years, we were just, him on the corporate side or the business side or the office editorial side, and me on the creative side. We both just kind of like come up together.
What was your experience of writing a comic for the first time, and what was it like facing a new challenge?
Oh man, writing was so interesting. My friends probably were so sick and tired of me, Ryan Stegman included. They were probably so sick and tired of me talking about it, because I would just obsess over it day after day after day. Like, how do you do this? And what am I going to do? What's my idea going to be? And how do you write a script? And, it's just like, it's just one of those things where I wanted all the information. It wasn't dissimilar to when I wanted to try to be a comic book artist, right? I wanted to go and I wanted to drive to again, the internet didn't exist back then. So I literally had to get into cars and drive like hours away from where I lived to a comic shop or a bookstore in hopes that they may have a how to draw book that I didn't even know existed. Like, it would just be like, maybe when I get to this place, there'll be a book that I don't even know if it exists, but maybe they'll have it. And I would do that a lot. I do that for records, and I would do that for books, where I would just travel like within like a 2-hour window of wherever I lived to try to find information on how to draw. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I was the same way with writing, except I didn't have to drive. I was like constantly picking everybody's brain. We'd talk about it all day. I would talk about it nonstop. And really, it's kind of the same thing that I do with everything in my life. Is I just finally jumped in and decided, like, okay, if I pitched my idea, I Hate Fairyland to Image, and they said yes, and then and they put it on a schedule, and I was like, oh, okay, it's time to do this, So I was definitely nervous. I was definitely nervous to take on that new challenge, but once I started doing it, I realized how much I needed that new challenge. I'd been drawing comic books at that time for almost 15 years. I mean, I'd written little stuff there, but no ongoings yet. So in 2014, like 13, 14 years, I had been only drawing and mostly drawing. And so when I took on Rocket Raccoon and I Hate Fairyland kind of around the same time, it was the first time that I was like writing monthly issues all on my own. And it was I didn't realize how much I needed that challenge to kind of make me fall in love with comics again and get me excited about creation and kind of like teach me about what collaboration was, because I had not worked with artists for that many issues. And so it taught me a lot about collaboration, which I had kind of, being an artist, you're kind of at the tail end of the collaboration side. And I had never been at the beginning part. So it was kind of nice to be able to, one of my favorite things now is making things up, handing it off and seeing it come back and being like, oh my gosh, this is so much better than I could have thought,
We have a question coming in from Eric Frogender, and he says, you wrote the Human Torch. Who is your favorite member of the Fantastic Four, and would you ever want to write that book?
Well, I drew Human Torch. I didn't write that. That was a long time ago. But my favorite Fantastic Four character, I gotta say, I'm gonna go outside of the Fantastic Four and say Galactus. Galactus is such a weird, cool character. And yeah, I think it'd be really fun to write the Fantastic Four. I would love to get, the Human Torch story that I did was very earthbound, and it was about a firefighter, and it was very different than what I think in my mind what the Fantastic Four is. So I would love to do some big cosmic Jack Kirby Galactus stuff with the Fantastic Four for sure.
That'd be awesome. I heard you say a while back that you had 2 covers due every week for a whole year. What kept you motivated to do that, and were you ever late on some of those covers?
Never late, and money. Money is that motivator. No, listen, I mean, I draw whether or not, I just like to draw. It's just what I do, I like to doodle, I like to sketch around, I like to think up funny gags. So that, like, and when you do something for as long as I've been doing it, it's no longer about what motivates you. It's just kind of, that's your habit, right? Like, you're gonna realize this one day. You'll have kids of your own, and then you're gonna think that all you want to do is sleep. Like right now, I would give anything if I could just sleep until 9. But even if I go to a hotel and I'm completely by myself, I'm 100% wide awake at 6:30, right? Because I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, and over the time, it's just habit now. I'm up for those kids at this time, and that's just what happens. So drawing and the motivation to do the covers and things like that, it's kind of the same thing. After so long, it's just what I do. So it's not, I don't need to be motivated to do it. I just know that it has to be done,
I heard you make a great comment when you did an interview with The Draw, and you said you were talking about an omnibus for Wizard of Oz, and you said someone could take it and read it in a couple of hours where it took you 5 years to make. And you said your brother had a heart transplant, and you said your dad had died, and there was a kid born. First, I'm sorry to hear about your dad, and how's your brother doing?
Oh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. My brother's doing great. We just passed his what we call Heart Day, so he has been I think it's 10 years. Is this the 10th year? 10th or 11th year? That's how good he's doing. And he's doing so good, I can't remember if it's 10 or 11 years since he had that heart transplant, right? Yeah, he's doing really great. It was a really weird time. And that was the first time I had worked on a book for that long. And then when you see that giant volume, do I have any right here? Yeah. Let's show your reader. So this book, right? And that, like here just looks like a really big book, right? But like inside, like all these pages are like such a life, right? Like my wife and I moved from Chicago right here. Then we moved to a town called Princeton right here. Then, my brother had a heart transplant right there. Then we moved to Peoria. My dad passed away right there. Then we had a kid. Oh no, we had a kid right here. So it's like almost everywhere through this book, I can map a new version of our adventure, right? Like of life's adventure, which is a really cool thing to do. Like comics are weird and kind of fun and special that way.
Well, it's awesome to hear that your brother's doing good right now. What was your motivation for this, and what made you not want to quit right there? Or did this cause a spark for you to go out and be one of the most popular artists?
Well, I just have never quit I'm not really a big quitter, but again, because drawing and making stuff is just who I am. I will say that that was a hard time. It definitely didn't. I wasn't I spent a lot of days trying to make more stuff, and it didn't. Oh, look, there's my son back there, Bear Tails. That's my son. He said, "Hey, Dad." He must be upstairs watching. Hey, Baxter. No, I will say during when my brother was sick and after my father passed away, it definitely was a weird time for creating. That's where I was really trying to figure out some creator-owned stuff and what stories I wanted to tell, and I was just struggling because, obviously that was a lot of heavy stuff. But honestly, I think drawing and making comics are what helped me get through that time. It kind of getting lost in these escapism. The escapism of comics helps you kind of get lost in it. So that was a big help there.
So this next question I have comes from another artist. He has a very stellar question for you, Skottie. We have a question coming in from Jeff Johnson. He's the guy on the Drink and Draw show. He thinks he worked on Wizard of Oz last month, 9 years ago.
That's okay. All right.
He also didn't study up for when you were going on the show. His stunning question for you is, which character would you be from Wizard of Oz and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say I would definitely be the Scarecrow. Anybody who knows me, and you probably noticed me even here in this chat, like I'm very I whip around and I talk with my hands a lot, and my wife moves all my glasses away from me while I'm talking because I spill a lot of glasses and break a lot of glasses. So yeah, I think it'd be Scarecrow. It's probably why he was also one of my favorite characters to draw all those years that I was doing it. But I think there's just something. Scarecrow is very much like me. I'm not saying I don't have any brains, but I definitely am let's go do this and let's just jump in and we'll worry about what happens later, right? Let's do it. Let's have some fun. So yeah, that's very much my personality.
So you were saying you moved your arms around a lot. We have these cabinet things and we always knock stuff over. We've broken a few pops because we accidentally whack it and it just breaks. So
I was gonna say I was looking at this earlier before we started. I was like, hey, I like how many of my books you got on there. That's pretty awesome. But I was like, you guys got a very fancy setup over there.
Thanks. My YouTube mentor, who might be in the chat right now, I'm not sure if he is, has a teacher when he was in school, and his teacher was married to Todd Mcfarlane. And once Todd came in 3 times after school to draw and show art. Do you mind telling your Todd McFarlane story?
Oh my gosh! So Wanda was his teacher.
Yeah.
Wanda's great. I got to meet her. I had dinner with those guys a couple years ago, and I got to sit and chat with her, which was really surreal, right? Because I grew up reading Spawn, and so I knew Wanda was named after Wanda, his wife, and so it was really interesting to do that, right? Yeah, my Todd McFarlane story. So I grew up. I started collecting Image books right when they launched. I wasn't into comics quite yet when Todd and all those guys were really big at Marvel. I mean, I got those books, but I wasn't quite sure who they were yet. And then Image launched, and I bought Spawn and everything, and I just loved Spawn. I loved that book. So he was one of my favorites. And Spawn was one of my favorites. He made Greg Capullo one of my favorites. But so in 2014 is when the Rocket Raccoon series that I wrote and drew came out. And we sold 350,000 copies or something of issue number 1, right? It was a crazy surprise hit. And it came out in the same weekend that the movie did. So there was this team up, So a couple months later, my phone rings. I'm just working at the studio and I get a call. And this guy goes, hey, I'm looking for the world famous Skottie Young. And I was like, well, that's a weird way to ask for me, but cool. Yep. He's like, hey, this is Todd McFarlane from Phoenix, bud. What? I thought it was Ryan Otley because Ryan Otley, who currently draws Amazing Spider-Man and who drew Invincible for all those years. He's a good buddy of mine, and he does a great Todd impression. Todd has a great voice. He's got a really excitable personality, and he's fantastic to talk to. But he's got such a specific voice, and Ryan does a very good version of it. And so I totally at first thought Ryan was punking me, but but it was from Phoenix that threw me off, like the fact that he would announce where he was calling from. So I just thought that was funny. And then the story goes, I ended up, I think we may have talked for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, we talked about Spawn, and he was giving me all types of cool tips, and awesome. And it was amazing. I mean, it was one of my like highlight nerd moments of my life, because this guy on this phone that I had studied up and read all of his stuff, and probably learned some of my business hustle from this person as well. And here I am on the phone, and I'm hearing some of these tips directly from him. And it's been great, because we've had a really good relationship in the years past that. And I consider him a friend now, even though I still kind of nerd out whenever I'm around him or whatever. So yeah, it was a great call.
36 Chambers Tattoo says Powers of X #4, the Mr. Sinister cover you did, is his favorite cover you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate that, buddy.
You made a comment early on about spending 16 hours on one page in a room filled with artists and not being happy with that page. I can kind of relate to that, because we spend so much time making a video, and sometimes we don't even like the way it comes out. What kept you to push forward, and did you ever think that this isn't for you and you didn't want to do this?
I definitely felt overwhelmed a lot in the early years, but it is mostly because I couldn't achieve what I saw in my head. And it wasn't, the thing is I am not like, I say this a lot, like I'm not a faux humble person, right? Like I don't go like, oh shucks, I suck. And I just kind of want you to tell me that I'm good. I don't do that. I don't fish for that kind of stuff. I'm pretty realistic when I know where I stand, right? And back then it wasn't that I was hard on myself, it was that I was very self-aware of where my abilities were. And it sometimes would bum me out that whatever led me to getting the jobs that I was getting, it bummed me out that I didn't feel that I knew that I wasn't quite good enough to pull it off in the way that I wanted. The thing that kept me at it was I knew that at some point I realized there's no way that I'm going to get there unless I just keep doing it. There's no magic tool. There's no magic pencil. There's no magic tip that somebody's going to give me. It's going to be, I'm going to have to draw hundreds of bad pages to get to mediocre pages, and then 100 mediocre pages to get to like some pretty good ones. And then at some point be like, oh, you know what? I kind of think I know what I'm doing now.
I heard the story where a girl came to you and said she wanted a beast sketch, and when she got it, she was like disappointed because it wasn't a little cute beast. What was your reaction at that time when people only knew you for your art of drawing little heroes?
Well, that's the moment where I realized that people did know me for that, and I didn't realize it because I was so it was about a year into doing the young version, like the little kid version of the Marvel characters. And I just did that. That was kind of like my side job, right? Like I was doing the Oz book still, and I did other covers, and then the little version of the Marvel thing started, and I would do those. And I didn't quite understand that people thought I wasn't aware yet that people were discovering me through those. I still was in the mind frame of like, oh, well, you know me from this, so, and you know that I also do this. But that was the moment. So for those who don't know, I was at a convention. I took a big sketch list. This woman asked for Beast. She came back up and to pick the sketch up, and I just drew Beast, like the adult Beast, and handed it to her, and she was like, thanks. Like, and it was the first time that anybody had ever gotten a sketch from me where they physically looked like, ugh, I hate this. You know, she didn't say that, and she didn't do anything mean. And you know, I've told the story a lot, and I guess I should put this out there. Like, she didn't do anything wrong. Like, she wasn't mean to me. She didn't say anything mean to me, but you could tell just her body language and her face. She was like disappointed, and she was like, "Boo!" She paid, and she went away, and it scarred me. I was like, man, she really did not like that drawing. And it took me about, I don't know, an hour or two to realize, wait a minute, I think she didn't like that because she thought when she asked for that, she would get this. And I didn't realize that's where things were. So after that moment, it changed my outlook, and I had to remind myself, like, there's probably a good deal of fees. So even to this day, which is we're talking about, that was 2008. When did I start those? 2012 when I started those, right? So 8 years later, even now when I take commissions, my manager and assistant Megan, I have to make sure that she writes down whether it's a little version or regular version of things, so I don't disappoint somebody.
Today, me and my dad were watching an interview with the late Anthony Bourdain, and it came out around 2 years ago, and he said that he liked to work with people that take chances instead of those who take the safe road. And can you relate to this at all? Do you like to work with people that take risks or chances instead of those who take the safe road just to be safe with everything that they do?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that if you go through any of the work that I've done where I'm writing books, any of the artists that I've collaborated with, anybody who I've picked to work with is always outside the box. Aaron Conley, I think is such a brilliant genius who co-created Bully Wars with me. He's hilarious. His artwork is so amazing and weird and illustrative and detailed, and it's amazing, right? But it's unsafe. That's why I love it, because it's unlike anything you'll ever see. I think Jorge Corona on Middlewest there's nobody else like him. Like you're not going to pick up a book and be like, oh, Jorge draws like, it's so outside the box. Jake Parker, who came on, one of my really close buddies who came on with me and did Rocket Raccoon, and Jay Fosgit and Felipe Andrade, and all the great artists that I've been able to work with and collaborate with over time is currently I'm working with Kyle Strom, is a really good buddy, and he shares a studio with me, and we're creating a new book. And each time I'm like, I want to work with people who you will never pick up another book and think that it looks like anything else. So 100%, I will always err on the side of like, let's go, me and my weird friends, let's go be weird,
That's awesome. Well, speaking of Bully Wars, how did you come up with it?
That's an old book, man. I really wrote that, like, I wrote it as a graphic novel first of all, and I wrote it around the time, like, right after Baxter was born. So it was like 10 years ago. Like, it's been sitting there for a really long time. I wanted to pitch something to Scholastic, because Scholastic graphics line where they print Bone and Smile, that was just getting started. And I was like, ooh, I'll go over and do a Scholastic book. And I wrote it, and I really wanted to play around with Diary of a Wimpy Kid was big and things like that. But I like to explore or examine the gray area of life, right? Where we're not talking about who, just like everybody's good and everybody's bad. Like most of the time, like if you read Middlewest, it's about kind of the weird gray area that's in between good and bad. And Bully Wars is very much that too. What you realize, and you probably, you're in this age group right now where you watch people change drastically. Like growing up, I watched somebody kind of be the bully and then go from the bully to kind of hanging out with the nerds. And we all kind of oscillate between that. And then, so I wanted to explore that in a way to kind of let young readers know, like, you don't decide who you are at one point and you're stuck in a lane. And I also didn't like that a lot of pop culture and a lot of movies and books, once we say somebody's a bully in those stories, they're a bully forever. And I've always liked the idea that we should want people to change. So Bully Wars really came from the concept of like, let's play around with the dynamics of how similar two people are, even though they're supposed to be opposites. Like they can probably still both really like the same video games and same movies. And let's play around with the idea that we don't have to be what the world tells us that we are. We can, there's room for change and there's room for growth,
I've had to stand up to bullies before, but talking about Bully Wars, I was able to pick up all the issues of it, and I really liked that series. So awesome job on that. I really liked it. How much fun did you have writing I Hate Fairyland? Because it seems like they let you just take it where you wanted to, and I was able to read the first 10 issues I really love like the first couple issues where she like blows up the moon and kills all the stars and they all come flying down. I really like that.
Falling stars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I Hate Fairyland was the funnest time I've ever had in comics so far. The great thing about Image Comics is you get to do whatever you want. You are your own boss. We own it. So I Hate Fairyland is mine 100%. So there's nobody who can tell me that I can't do something. And when you have that kind of freedom, it's the closest thing to being the 14-year-old who was just making stuff up and just playing pretend. So I Hate Fairyland was the closest I've come to being a big kid and playing pretend and nobody telling me that I couldn't. So it's definitely the funnest time I've had in almost 20 years I've been doing this.
So right now we have a question from the other person on Drink and Draw. He draws. He starts fights. His name is Dan Panosian. His question for you is, what was the most amount of pages you've had to draw in one day? And his guess is 6.
6? Oh, Dan. 6. I'll wipe that dirt off my shoulder for the 6. The most pages that I have done in a day is 9. Nice. I've done 9 pages once. I was exhausted. I will not tell you ever which pages they were. I was not unhappy with those 9 pages. But they were absolutely way far into my career. But yeah, 9 was my most extreme. On an average, I'm usually at a 2 or 3 pages of. I do 2 or 3 pages of one discipline though now. So it'll be like I might draw 2 or 3. Well, I might draw between 2 and 4 pages, or ink between 2 and 4 pages. So it really depends. When I'm penciling a book, I pencil it all. And then I go back and ink it. I pencil it sequentially. So it's like 1 through 20 or 1 through 22 or however many pages. But when I'm inking, I lay out everything and look, and I pick which ones for the day that like, here's 2 really easy ones and here's 2 difficult ones. So I can like rearrange the day or rearrange the week to get done. So the inking stage is much faster for me. Also, I'm a really sloppy inker, so it helps. But hey, everybody needs to know Dan Panosian is one of my favorite illustrators, man. He is so, so, so good.
Now, we're going to be moving into talking about Middlewest. But before I ask this question, I got the newest issue of Middlewest right here, number 17. I read it. I really loved it. It was awesome. But I got to the last page, and I was like, really? I was like, I don't like this anymore. Second to last issue? What the heck? There's one more issue?
One more.
Come on, it's one of my favorite series right now.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Listen, this was always the plan. We knew that it was ending, so we're not getting the rug pulled out from under us. I know some people were worried like that we're getting canceled or we didn't move enough, but we really struggled with this choice because we knew our initial plan was to end it here, and then somewhere along the way, when it got, when it started getting a good readership, and Image wanted us to keep going, and we Jorge and I kind of put our heads together and we thought about a way to possibly do it, but we realized in the end that taking it beyond Abel and his dad's story would really water it down. It would feel like you did this big emotional story about a father and a son and dealing with the, breaking the chain of abuse and generational of toxic masculinity and things like that. And then we'd also put another trait or something, we wanted to, and we wanted to roll with it. We're like, oh man, we're probably leaving some money on the table, but this is one of those times where we've got to let the story tell us when a book needs to end. And this is one of the times. And I, one of my favorite books of all time from one of my favorite authors of all time and one of my closest friends is I Kill Giants, written by Joe Kelly. And that was very similar. He had I learned that from him, where he was like, I Kill Giants was 7 issues. That's it. It can't be more than that because the story is not more than that. And that's where Jorge and I kind of agreed with this was these 18 issues. It's Abel's story with his dad. And if it went on more than that, we feel that we would be doing a disservice to that story and what it meant. So Sorry to break your heart, Will. Hey, this is one of those. You have a lot of heartbreaks over life. You're gonna have to live with it.
Yep. Well, I really like it. It's one of my favorite series, like I said. But being a writer and an artist, but writing a book like Middlewest, do you ever get frustrated at the artist that is drawing because it's different from how you pictured it, or do you just go with it?
No, I never get frustrated. I think the thing that I've learned is I take real care at the beginning to make sure that whoever I'm collaborating with is somebody who I trust from the beginning. And then we do a lot of work up front. In the heavy lifting we do up front, and the design and the discussions that we talk about, the color palettes and the style choices, and even, you know, like Jorge and I talked a lot about where he wanted to go with his inking style. And if we do all that heavy lifting up front, and again, the key is picking somebody that you already know you trust. Once you trust them, then past that, once I put those words down, it's theirs to do with what they want. And I don't think that I've ever had anything come back, with the exception of like minor tweaks in the thumbnail stage. You know, I don't think that I've ever had a situation where I'm like, oh no, this is totally wrong. It's always right, because we teamed up with the right person at the beginning, you know? Yeah. So I love picking really, really smart, talented artists that make me look way better than I am at writing.
So I'm looking in your background right now, and I notice they have a guitar. Do you play?
I don't. That's my, this opposite. That's my wife's. She's amazing. You'll have to check her out on YouTube. She has some old videos from when she used to have bands and write and singing the right songs and everything. But no, she's the singer-songwriter. I do not play.
Cool. That's I play the guitar too, and
awesome.
During this whole quarantine thing, I haven't really practiced that much, but focusing on this, back to this. Going back to your paper route, I noticed that Abel also had a paper route. Did you want Abel to have a touch of you in himself?
Yeah, I mean, Middlewest is a really personal story. Almost, I mean, most of the things throughout that book are things that are really from my life. So that's another reason why Middlewest has to end where it has to end, because that was the story that I wanted to tell. And going beyond that wouldn't be truthful, you know? So I think, yeah, I think that there's, you know, Abel isn't exactly me, but he is from, you know, he's got the elements of me, and he's going through things that I went through. And I think at the end of the day, I wanted to also make sure that people feel that he is them as well, you know, that everybody can find a little bit of them. If somebody's going through hard times, that they can realize like, oh, I understand this, or I'm connecting with this, or whatever.
Now, before this interview, I was reading Strange Academy #1, just trying to refresh on all the stuff that you've done so far. And I was looking through, just going over all the details, and I noticed that you put your dog in it. How often do you put something special from your life into your comics, and what are some examples?
Well, it's that one was really special because we lost Emma this year. So that was kind of that was my tribute to be able to, you know, putting our Saint Bernard Emma in Strange Academy #1. I try to whenever I can, right? I love those fun Easter eggs. So in an issue of Deadpool that I wrote a couple years ago, it was the Christmas issue. My sons Baxter and Milo, and then friends of our family, their daughters Zoe and Junie, were a part of the kid crew that hired Deadpool to kill Santa. We put Jorge threw in me and Casey and George Hage, who wrote the Middlewest song for us and is a good friend of ours. He threw them in Middlewest. But we try to do that. I try to do that at least here and there throughout everything. I throw in friends of mine, like, you know, I threw in my buddies Jason Wood and David Price and Vince from 11 O'Clock Comics. I threw them in I Hate Fairyland. You know, they were like deep diving into quarter bins at a fantasy convention. So yeah, I try to do that whenever I can.
When I was going over like the details, like I said, uh, the two of them were walking through like the city or that little town that they were in, and I was looking at all the people that were drawn in that little panel, and I couldn't tell if that was you in there. Was that you?
Oh yeah, Umberto definitely put me in, there. So they're in downtown. They're in New Orleans, right there on Bourbon Street,
Yep.
and that is me and our editor Nick Lowe, I think, standing there. Which after we got Strange Academy greenlit, I talked everybody into letting us go to New Orleans. So me and my wife Casey, who's a photographer, and Umberto and Kathleen and Danny and Nick, our editors, all went to New Orleans for like 3 or 4 days. And I mean, all we did was research. That's it. We didn't do anything nefarious, or we didn't have any adult beverages or anything like that. We just researched things.
Okay. Strange Academy has huge potential of being something great. It has a touch of the Harry Potter vibe. Is there a lot of pressure from Marvel as you work on this book?
No, I mean, again, the great thing about Strange Academy was this is all from me. Like, I just pitched it I talked about it here and there, and then one night I texted CB at like 11 o'clock at night about it, and then there was an editorial retreat that came up, and like they kind of popped it on me when I was there, like, hey, pitch your Marvel Magic book, and so I pitched it, and everybody really loved it. So no, it doesn't feel like a lot of pressure. Again, it feels like the closest that I've come at Marvel to kind of feeling like I'm doing a creator own there, because most of the characters in there are brand new. I mean, I'm using the Marvel tropes and the Marvel lands, but all the kids that we've created are brand new.
Do you want to tell everyone when issue number 2 comes out and what to expect?
Oh, Will, you probably know better than me when issue 2 comes out. I think July. I think it's back in July, right? The quarantine has really messed my whole brain up on what time means at all. I think issue 2 comes out then in July, and it's just going to be more getting to know the kids and what a day in the life. I think issue 2 is a day in the life of a student at Strange Academy. So you're going to see some cool classes. You're going to start learning how to, use their third eye and all types of fun, weird, wacky stuff. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff coming in. And Umberto, I cannot sing this man's praises enough. He is just an absolute genius with his art.
Rob Boswell says that he likes you even more now. So,
well, thank you, Rob. Rob, right? You say Rob?
Yep.
Thank you, Rob.
And what should everyone expect from the last issue of Middlewest?
Well, I can't tell you that. Come on. You know what you can expect? If you do not cry, you are dead inside. I cried like a baby writing it. So if you don't cry reading it, then we can't be friends.
Well, I think I might cry on that one.
All right. I want you to read it on camera and cry live on YouTube. That's my challenge.
All right. What do your kids think of what you're doing? Are there rooms filled with art?
Milo's is filled with more art than Baxter's, but because he's just younger, so he's started to tell us that he wants to start putting up his own stuff, so it'll probably start to change. I don't know. That's hard to say. Like I said, I mean, I'm mostly dad to them, so I think it doesn't matter how cool your job is if your kids are always around it. It doesn't seem as odd because it's just what dad does, right? I think Baxter's really liking me a lot. He's thinking I'm way cooler right now because I'm working on getting my YouTube channel together. So I'm gonna start doing some YouTube drawing videos and stuff like that. So he's super into YouTube. So he's like, oh yeah. He's like, he thinks I think, and he's like, how many subscribers do you think you'll get, Dad? I was like, well, of course I'm gonna get 2 million, duh. And he's like, no. He said 95,000. That's where he he threw that number at me. Oh, you know what? I got to show you something. So a couple of years ago, I went away to Heroes Con because Heroes Con's always on Father's Day, and he made something for me while I was gone for Father's Day. But we're talking about this, so I'm gonna grab it. So at the time, I had like. I was like barely ever used my YouTube channel at all, but I think I had like 5,000 some subscribers or something. And he had studied and he knew all the buttons that you get, right? Like if you get so many, you probably know, right? Like you get the red button, the diamond, whatever. So him and his grandpa and grandma, while we were gone, called around to like people and emailed people to get my followers up past 6,000. And then him and his grandpa made me this.
Oh, cool.
They made me a button.
Oh,
isn't that cool?
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have my own custom YouTube button made by my son for Father's Day. So that was really cool.
Well, here's what I don't understand. I'm interviewing all these awesome artists, and we only have 600 subscribers.
Well, you're building up.
Yeah.
Listen, if you do not gain a big number of subscribers from having me on, then I don't even know what I might quit my job.
All right, there you go. I have a couple questions left. I'm just gonna let the people know if you have any questions, just write them in the chat, and then I'll try and get to as many as I can. But I'm just gonna let you know so I have time to go over these questions, and then I can be able to answer it. Going back to your kids, do they ask you to draw for them all the time?
Nope. My older son, when he was young, when he was about 5 and 6, he really liked logos, like movie studio logos and all types of logos. So he would ask me and his mom to draw logos all the time. And I'm like the Universal logo or the Progressive Insurance logo or whatever, right? It was just all types of logos. But other than that, no, not really. They don't ask me to draw that much. I do, it's usually like, Dad, can you look up a Mario Odyssey walkthrough? Can you look up there's a new SpongeBob Switch game that I have to look up walkthroughs for. Dad, could you get me a snack? Dad, I'm hungry. Could you get me another snack? That kind of stuff.
But we have a question from Roz Bobswell, and he wants to know what your favorite tattoo is.
What my favorite tattoo is? Oh, it's my Alfred E. Newman tattoo.
Yeah, I really like that one.
It was good, but also my Calvin Hobbes is pretty great.
Cool.
And then I got my art heart. Hold on.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's got all the art tools that I use.
Cool. We have a question from 90MF Comics. What's your favorite food and movie?
My favorite food is pizza, because it's the best food. My favorite movie, man. Oh my gosh, that was the toughest. It's so tough. I probably always err on the side of Neverending Story because it's just one of the first movies that I watched when my dad, VCRs first came out and he rented one and came home, and that big epic fantasy just stuck with me. So I'd probably say Neverending Story would take the cake on that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that movie, and when I watched it for the first time as a kid, the name was Neverending Story, and when the movie ended, I was like, Dad, I thought I was just going to keep going.
Will, did you ever read the book? Have you read the novel?
Not yet.
Ooh, you should read the novel. But you have to get the print novel because it's really cool. They actually print the text in 2 different colors so that you know if you're reading Bastian's side of the story or Atreyu's side of the story.
Wow.
And the movie ends about halfway through where the book goes. So the book has way more.
Well, our last question that I have. Oh, well, we have a question from Mike Rogers first. What's your favorite variant besides your own for Strange Academy #1?
Oh my gosh! I gotta say, it's probably the J. Scott Campbell one. That was really J. Scott Campbell one was really awesome. But also, I don't know. It's impossible to decide because we got Arthur Adams covers on all these, right? Like Arthur Adams is doing covers for a book I drew. I can't even believe it. So, but yeah, probably Campbell's. Campbell's was really cool. It was, again, like these guys, like I read these guys' books when I was in high school, right? So like they're like Umberto. I read Umberto books when I was in high school. I read Campbell books when I was in high school, and now these guys are doing covers for books art for books that I'm writing, and it's blowing my mind. So it's cool.
Now, we have a friend that does YouTube. He just hit 1,000 subscribers, and his name is ComicHead84, and he wanted to know if there was like any art that you have that you could show.
That I can show here? Well, this is my home. This is the home office, so everything. You know what? Yeah, let's see. everything's at my office, but I've got all these sketchbooks. Let's see. I've got all the. Oh yeah, here we go. So we'll talk about Wizard of Oz. Here's this is just random from years ago. Here is me figuring out my design for Tip and the Sawhorse.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I mean, I just pulled. I've got dozens of these, like ringed notebook pages. So these are all probably, these are 10 years old. These drawings are all 10 years old. Just like crazy doodles. Like sometimes they're for stuff. Oh, my Bernard. I did those Bernard sketches a long time ago. So it was just like me coming up with that. There we go. This is just cool. This is like my sketchbooks don't have like a lot of finished stuff in them. It's usually just me hunting for hunting for shapes, hunting for feeling, experimenting. Usually it's not meant to be seen past like.
That's so cool.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, there's here, let's pull one more out. Let's see what we got. I have no idea what half these are.
What's up, Bueller?
Let's see. Yeah, this is like, I don't know what I was doing here, just like drawing weird bears. I mean, oh, look, here you can see I had not figured out Gert yet. Oh. So these are like all the, like, this is me kind of exploring like what she's going to look like. Oh yeah, this is kind of fun. So here, this is what Gert was going to be before Gert was a, oh, are you still there?
Yeah, we're still here. We just made you bigger.
So this is what, before I decided that she was going to be a little girl, she was going to be a big dude. And so this is me, like the big dude sitting on a mushroom. I don't think I've showed anybody that. I was like trying to figure out like that. This was like this big dude and his sidekick Pillow. It was just like a sentient pillow instead of Larry. Probably can't tell anybody. I still might do that. So yeah, you can just see like where all this stuff gets made. Oh, here's early. Yeah, look, my boy at the end character. Still trying to find out how to draw that book all these years later. So yeah, it's yeah, this one's interesting. Oh, look, yeah, you can see all like still hadn't figured out Gert at that time. Larry was going to be like a mean monkey. So yeah, like that's what all these books I've got. Like you're gonna see. I'm not gonna show you more, but I'll just show you. Like I'll pull these out so everybody can see.
Oh, wow.
Oh, hold on. Ooh. So this.
My address is.
Yeah, that's what I do all the time when I say I draw all the time. But it's just like you're just kind of searching for ideas. I have to go back through there and find some old ideas.
I just want to say thanks so much for showing off those art. They're really awesome.
Thank you.
So this last question comes in from one of your good friends, Ryan Stegman. He works on that awesome book, Venom. He works with Donnie Cates. You know the one? No? Okay.
I don't know.
I interviewed him I interviewed him 4 weeks ago. He wants to know how many hours you logged on to Skype with him and why those were the best hours of your life.
Oh my gosh. So Ryan and I probably, oh man, I'd probably say a solid 10 years in a row, 8 to 10 years in a row, we Skyped. I mean, we'd get to work at 9 to 5. We'd almost Skype 9 to 5 with each other through the workday just every day. It was just our routine. It was kind of like we worked in an office together, except we didn't. Ryan's, one of my best buds in the world. And it was that, especially when I lived in Peoria and stuff where we didn't have a ton of real life friends to hang out with, and definitely not a big creative community. It was really cool to have, friends like Ryan, where we just kind of like kind of sparked up a friendship so quickly and had somebody to like kick it with and draw and throw ideas around. And, you know, it was really invaluable to my life for sure. That's why, like, all joking aside, it was super important to me doing what I do now, you know, just having that kind of energetic, you know, Ryan's so full of energy and he's always thinking, and he's such a studier. So he's a really good guy to bounce ideas off of for sure.
Well, that's all the questions I have. I just want to say thank you so much. This was so much fun. And just like Ryan, the door is always open. If you want to come on and talk about like new books that you're coming out with to hype it up, man, this was so awesome. It made me really happy to do this. You can always come back and talk about new books, skateboards, music, or whatever.
Awesome.
I mean, I really appreciate this. You took a chance at a smaller channel, and I hope you had fun with this. And everyone watching, thanks for doing this. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And if you like the video, like the damn video. And we'll catch you all next time.
Thanks, Will.